Every single summer, millions of people surrender their outdoor spaces to a microscopic predator, while simultaneously handing over their wealth to a global chemical cartel. The global insect repellent market is currently valued at over $5.2 billion, according to 2023 industry evaluations. This massive financial ecosystem is not an accident of nature. It is a highly engineered, meticulously maintained system of manufactured complexity designed to keep you trapped in a perpetual cycle of endless purchasing. You buy a chemical spray, you apply the toxic spray to your skin, the spray inevitably evaporates, the insects return, you are forced to buy another spray. This is the perfect, unbreakable business model. If you have a half-empty bottle of toxic chemical bug spray sitting uselessly in your garage right now, drop the word poisoned in the comments. We want to know exactly how many people are dealing with this exact problem, because the sheer scale of this manufactured dependency is statistically staggering. The chemical giants have successfully conditioned the consumer market to accept a reality where deliberate toxic exposure is the only available path to outdoor comfort. They have normalized the act of self-poisoning in exchange for maybe 2 hours of temporary relief. The entire foundation of this global industry is a calculated lie built over decades of heavily suppressed botanical science. This is the part where the numbers become uncomfortable. When you purchase a standard commercial repellent, you are paying for a product that is chemically formulated to fail over a precise, predetermined timeline. The active synthetic ingredients, predominantly diethyl toluamide, do not eradicate the vector threat. They merely scramble the olfactory receptors of the insect for a brief window of time. When you examine the molecular structure of these commercial synthetic repellents, you are looking at a meticulously balanced chemical equation of built-in obsolescence. The synthetic molecules are specifically calibrated to break down rapidly upon contact with human sweat and ambient ultraviolet radiation. As soon as the volatile synthetic compounds dissipate from your epidermis, you immediately reappear on the thermal and chemical radar of the insect. The industry relies entirely on this rapid dissipation. Their recurring revenue model demands that the barrier degrades quickly. If a single application solved the mosquito problem permanently, their quarterly profit margins would completely collapse overnight. They spend billions in marketing to ensure that you associate outdoor survival exclusively with their pressurized aerosol cans and their branded plastic pump bottles. But long before these chemical conglomerates monopolized your backyard, the military faced this exact biological threat on a scale that commercial retail markets could never comprehend. In 1969, the United States Department of Defense was confronted with a critical operational failure in severe tropical environments. Ground forces were sustaining significantly more casualties from vector-borne diseases than from direct combat encounters. Heavy monsoon rains washed away standard topical chemical applications within minutes, and the dense jungle canopy trapped extreme humidity, creating the perfect biological incubator for mosquitoes. The standard chemical repellents issued to frontline personnel were actively melting synthetic uniform fabrics and failing completely. This urgent tactical requirement led to highly classified botanical trials to establish permanent, self-sustaining biological exclusion zones around forward operating bases. The reason this military-grade botanical protocol is completely absent from your local hardware store today is pure corporate economics. You cannot patent a basic biological plant cutting, and what you cannot patent, you cannot build a billion-dollar industry on. The Entomological Society of America inadvertently confirmed these suppressed military findings in 1982, publishing a peer-reviewed study proving that specific plant exudates cause a permanent, catastrophic electrical overload of the maxillary palp sensors of the insect, effectively blinding them to carbon dioxide emissions forever. They buried the science. We dig it up. What you are about to hear dismantles the entire premise of the commercial pest control industry. We will now break down the exact botanical specimen and the precise mechanical extraction methodology that the military utilized to clear those jungle perimeters. But before we cross that operational threshold, you must understand the immense weight of the information you are currently absorbing. If you made it this far, you already know more about this biological mechanism than 99% of consumers worldwide. Subscribe and share this to protect this knowledge before the industry tries to actively erase it again. The chemical cartel relies entirely on your silence, your ignorance, and your continued financial submission. Every single time you share this archived data, you actively degrade their market dominance and disrupt their psychological hold over the population. Here's the part nobody tells you about: deploying botanical defense mechanisms. The reason most people fail miserably when trying to use natural plants against insects is because they treat the living plant like a static, decorative object. They buy the correct plant, place it in an expensive decorative pot, water it heavily once a week, and then complain loudly when a mosquito bites them 3 feet away from the foliage. That is a fundamental, fatal misunderstanding of plant physiology. A heavily fortified biological fortress, armored with millions of microscopic glandular trichomes that serve as highly pressurized storage tanks for complex defensive chemicals. In their undisturbed state, the plant emits just enough chemical vapor to protect its own immediate foliage. To achieve massive spatial repellency, you must execute the exact mechanical protocol used by military combat engineers. You must perform a controlled enzymatic crush on the perimeter leaves to trigger the systemic physiological stress response of the plant, physically forcing it to continuously bleed its volatile organic compounds into the surrounding atmosphere without killing the host tissue. The specific biological weapon heavily documented in the 1969 military archives is a highly specialized broadleaf variant of the Lamiaceae family, specifically carrying massive concentrations of nepentolactone and heavy citronellol terpenes. While the exact military hybrid was heavily restricted, the most genetically accessible and equally devastating equivalent available to the civilian market today is the broadleaf Plectranthus amboinicus, commonly and deliberately disguised in the retail nursery trade as simply Cuban oregano or the Vicks plant. You can easily acquire a live cutting of this exact botanical structure for roughly $2 at almost any obscure local plant nursery. It actively thrives on absolute neglect and aggressively propagates in the most hostile, nutrient-deficient environments imaginable. The internal chemical profile of this specific broadleaf succulent contains an overwhelming, highly toxic concentration of thymol, carvacrol, and heavy camphor-based compounds. When these specific molecular structures are forcefully released and bind with the ambient moisture in the evening air, they form an invisible, low-hanging chemical smoke that is biologically terrifying to all species of mosquitoes. To execute this operational protocol correctly, you will establish what the military designated as a biological bleed line. Take your $2 cutting and propagate it in a wide, shallow container using incredibly poor, highly sandy soil to deliberately stress the root system, forcing the plant to overproduce its defensive volatile oils. Place this container exactly upwind of your primary outdoor seating area. Every single evening, approximately 20 minutes before the primary vector feeding cycle begins, approach the outer boundary of the plant. Do not detach the leaves. Instead, take your thumb and forefinger and firmly roll the outer edges of exactly 3 large, mature leaves until you physically feel the internal cellular structure collapse beneath your skin. By crushing the microscopic trichomes while the leaf is still biologically connected, you trigger a panicked physiological pumping of terpene compounds directly to the damaged site. Because the crushed leaf is still technically alive, it does not dry out. It actively bleeds its defensive botanical vapor continuously for up to 4 solid hours, creating a compounding, invisible residual barrier that strengthens every single time you activate the plant. Compare this biological reality to the expensive deception sold to you by the chemical syndicates. They demand that you spend $20 every few weeks on a pressurized aerosol can containing highly synthetic liquids that pollute your immediate environment, silently irritate your respiratory system, and require constant manual reapplication directly to your epidermis. They built a $5.2 billion global empire by slowly convincing humanity that natural botanical biology was somehow inferior to their patented, highly profitable synthetic chemistry. They deliberately engineered a chemical product that is specifically designed to run out, designed to fail, and designed to keep you blindly returning to the retail shelf. The $2 botanical alternative requires no plastic packaging, no massive industrial manufacturing plants, no synthetic aerosol propellants, and absolutely no ongoing financial investment. It requires only the historical knowledge that they tried so desperately to erase from the public consciousness. Now you finally possess the blueprint. You have the declassified archival data. You completely understand the specific biological mechanics of the disruption cloud. It is time to stop renting your own backyard from massive corporations that view your physical discomfort as their primary source of recurring revenue. The era of blind chemical dependency ends the exact moment you plant the perimeter.